Hello, everyone. Let me know in the chat real quick if you can hear me just fine. I know we have still a minute to starting time, so just gonna have a cup of tea while we wait. I hope everybody is having a great FrockCon. I know that FrockFlix is absolutely one of my favorite websites to just chill out on. So I was so happy when Tristan had FrockCon coming out because I'm like, yay, I get to be part of it because I just love Snark Week. It's like my favorite thing ever. So glad you guys can hear me well. So I'm just going to give everybody a minute or so to get on. Just so you know, anytime you guys have questions, pop them into the chat. Anytime that, you need me to stop or slow down or, just want to say hi, pop them in. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Ariana Bauer. I am the owner here at Crossplay Sewing School, and my goal is to help costumers, historical sewers, anytime anybody who's a cosplayer, costumer, everyone just to be able to learn to sew because, in my opinion, learning to sew is one of the most critical aspects of costuming because we have to wear clothes. So I started kind of working, hey Yuki, started working towards figuring out how to use this stuff. Foam. And foam was a little scary to me. I have to say, I wanted to do some things that were painted and I wanted to kind of have a different look to some of my garments. And I do happen to have several friends who are amazing foam smiths. And I wanted to be able to produce work that would sort of be up to par with their work. So what I started thinking was, well, I'm a seamstress, right? I've been sewing since I was 6. There's bound to be a way to do this where I can actually sew with foam. So I worked and worked. I did an ungodly amount of samples until I finally figured out a way to manage to make it foam on the outside but still sewable. And my super secret is fusing this to fabric. And actually, I need to grab one thing real quick. Give me like 30 seconds. I need to step out of the screen for a minute. I forgot the other secret weapon. The last secret weapon, here we go, is, I can get this, fusible web. So, fusible web is my super top secret helper. It does lots of things in lots of places and just makes everything work easier. So I get to treat then my foam exactly like fabric. I'm just going to get a lot of this packaging off. So much packaging. I hate that the world has so much packaging. All right, so we are then, I guess, going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to get rid of, oh, here we go. Let me do the overhead here real quick. And, clicking all the things. Sorry. Here we go. There we go. What I'm going to show you here is kind of all the tools that we have. So I have foam. This is 2mm foam that is from SKS Props. I really like their foam because it is gray, which means I can write on it with any instrument, and it's just really durable, really good stuff. Now, a little thing to note about the foam, the important thing is that we use a foam designed for crafting. Because when we use foam that is for flooring and you heat it, you're actually going to be having issues with smells that you don't need to be smelling. So if you do not have foam designed for crafting that is minus the materials that are nasty when heated, you need to make sure you are wearing a respirator, just like the floor tiles and things like that. So I won't be wearing a respirator because I don't need to with this foam. This foam is safe. So I'm going to put away my big roll because we just need a bit here for our demonstration. And I am going to then go on to our next item, which is fabric. We're going to need our heat and bond. We're going to need something to cover the foam with whenever it goes through the sewing machine. So I use either paper. This is actually just regular copy paper, or this is really cool stuff. This is called water soluble stabilizer. And they use this for embroidery, and you can use this on top of a lot of different fabrics and in various cases. And this is technically made out of cornstarch and some other stuff that is all water soluble. And then I also have parchment paper. We're going to be using this as a protective surface against our iron. And I'm going to grab something here real quick. Can't reach it. Okay, I just want to show you guys, to you guys. So this is a foam corset. This is actually boned. So if I do this here, you'll see there's structure in the foam. This is made with 2mm foam put onto, this was a test run, so that's actually an old sheet. Because, you know, test runs. And there is only one spot where there is glue in this, and that is up along this binding up at the top, and that's just super glue. And you can see I put grommets in here, and this will hold weight. It's not going to take me in several inches, but it will hold weight. So that's going to work. All right, I need to give me 1 second here because it appears my internet is being cranky. So I apologize if there is a lot of latency here. I don't know what I can do about this. So we'll figure it out. Please use I don't know. All right, back on to thing. I apologize for that. I don't know why my internet is being wonky today. Providers. Okay, so I have this foam corset. This is just an underbust. This is a pattern from Arania Black, and her patterns are all free, by the way. And all I did was make it straight out of the gate. No real changes for fit or anything, because I just wanted to see this was a proof of concept. So this has both boning channels that are embedded inside using an overlapping seaming. And then it also has external boning channels. So you can see those are sewn into the inside. But all of the structure of this is sewn on. And the reason that you have to use boning still even in foam. Now, one of the things that I love to do in foam, all over in foam, is you can get away with 2mm foam just about everywhere on your body by simply adding a bit of plastic boning. And you know that plastic boning that anyone who makes corsets tells you to stay as far away from as possible? This is where you use it. So if you have that cheap stuff, use it here, because the foam itself has enough structure to it that, you know, that's fine. And you can always give it a bit more structure by stabilizing with something like a heavy twill or a canvas. So then we can use our boning in here that can be, you know, messed with. And another reason why I would suggest, especially not to use steel, is because the plastic boning, when heated, and that's actually how this, part of this shape comes from, you can see it here, part of this shape comes from the fact that the boning channels themselves, the boning in there is heat formed along with the foam. So I have heated this with a heat gun and then actually just held it like this, and that cheap plastic boning with heat will actually conform to the shape that it's given. So, and there's boning inside of each of these, which is holding these guys inside. There's a little too many eyelets. I totally get that for the space needed. I made a little boo-boo, and so, but test corset, that's how that works. Okay, so we're going to throw that off to the side. We're going to put some other stuff off to the side, and we're going to start at 0. So I have a piece of foam that I have already cut out. Now this foam cuts like butter. So this is actually just a very cheap pair of dollar store scissors. So I have just cut a piece off and have been manipulating it with there. So that's really cool because you just need dollar store scissors. Let me move this out of the way there. All right, so what we're going to be doing here is we are going to be taking the fabric, getting our heat and bond attached to that, and then attaching the fabric to the foam. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of generally get a piece of fabric the same size as here. Okay, and I'm just going to tear this fabric so it's on grain. Still pay attention to the grain. I know it's probably not critical at this point, like with what we're doing here with the foam, but as a person who sews, we always pay attention to the grain of the fabric. And when you are on grain, you can tear. All right, and so the next step here is going to be, I hit the wrong camera, so just cut out some of this. All right, so heat and bond. So this is actually glue. It is a sheet of glue, and it's actually kind of textured. I know you can't see it, but you'll feel it when you get it. And it's put onto like a silicone-y parchment paper. It's basically this stuff. And what this is going to do is fuse it to this side, to the fabric, and then we'll pull that backing off and we will have the glue on the other side, in which case then that glue can be heat fused to the foam. So I'm just going to place this on here, just kind of catty corner it, leaving a bit because I left some room extra, and I'm going to cut this. And save all of your scraps of this stuff because it is super usable, and this doesn't have a grain because it's just glue. So you can use all of this. There's really not much that goes to waste. The brand of craft foam that I am using is from SKS Props. I'll pop that here in the chat in just a second. It is 2mm foam, and you get it from Blick Art Supplies. So, helps if I was in the right window. SKS Props from Blick. There we go. So if anybody needs any, Steven, that is the owner there, he is actually a friend of mine. And I don't just push the stuff because he's a friend of mine. I'm not that kind of person. But I actually like to use it. I've tried a whole bunch of different brands, and TNT Cosplay also has a brand that is equal in capabilities, but it's black, so I can't write on it, which really drives me nuts. Okay, so now we need our super top secret weapon, which is our iron. We're going to set our iron for this particular step onto its highest setting, and we are going to turn steam on. I know that this is not necessarily the way people tell you to fuse, but I find this method works very, very well. So I'm going to place my iron in the middle, and I'm just kind of hold it there. You can wiggle it a little, but don't move it around much. And this is going to give us our first set. And now what I'm going to do is slowly scooch it, and then slowly scooch it again, and each time I'm kind of counting until we have done the whole piece. And I'm going to come back over here, and we'll turn it in just a second because this is a small ironing board. And what this is doing is making sure that we have a nice smooth. By starting in the middle, we're going to make sure we have a really nice and smooth run here. Right. All right. So if you use a silver Sharpie, you can brighten it. Yes, that's true. But I lose everything. So I am especially losing my silver Sharpies. I've actually found that a white China marker, if you've done any artwork, you'll be able to find those pretty easy. They're kind of a very soft wax. I find those work actually even better than the silver Sharpie, and unlike the silver Sharpie, which is always dried up for some reason, the China markers are, they don't dry up. They can't dry up. Okay, so secret. Don't move this until it's cool. That's the big trick. I used to suck at fusing. Seriously, suck at fusing. Until I learned from a teacher of mine to not move it till it's cool because the glue will separate from the fabric as long as it is warm. So when this basically feels mostly cool to touch, we can kind of, air it out a little. That's when we'll pull this backing off. So let's test and see. Yep, it's coming apart. Now, do you see how shiny that is right here? that shininess is the glue. So we have a beautiful strip of glue and an unfortunate a bit of thread in there, but oh well. You know what? We can get that loose. Oh no, that's going to leave us with a little spot. That's okay. We'll be okay. I'm going to get a little bit of extra infuse on there because that wasn't really that was kind of, don't do that. So yeah, don't have threads in there because that will happen. So if you want to know what not to do, ask me because I've done all the not tos. All right, let's do this here. So to do this, because we don't want to get our glue on that, we're going to put this here. Just reuse that. All right. And this will fuse that back just a smidge. I just want to get some glue up in that spot. There we go. So, hot, 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 hot. It's very hot. Okay. There, see? That glue wasn't cool yet, so it stuck to my paper. Ow! Very hot. And don't do that either. I just fused glue to my ironing board. All right, let's try and get this back off. I am really O&O today. So, all right, here we go. We're going to use some parchment paper on there. Anyway, I'm going to attempt to remove this from my fabric, from my board. Ah! Hot glue. There we go. It's mostly gone. It'll work. All right, now let's see. Yep, we're good. We got that little weird threadbare spot where that thread did its thing. Okay, now we have a base to fuse upon, and the next step is going to be to get the foam onto the fabric. Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to burn myself. I'm not very good at not burning myself. I've burned myself so many times. So, the iron. Now, a lot of people have sewn their fingers. I've never sewn my finger. So, I just burn my hands. And yes, this will get very, very hot. So, I have just cut a piece of parchment paper. So, this parchment paper is protecting my board from any sort of drama or possible glue melting accidents like I already did once. And that's going to be that because there's some glue on this outside and past where I'm at. But I want to go past because of the way the fusing works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my iron down to 2, which is its wool setting. And I'm just going to iron nowhere to dissipate that heat. And so now I've dissipated the heat. And I'm going to work this the same way. Now the foam will withstand some steam. So I am just hitting this with steam as I go across. Now, the only trick with the foam is we have to keep moving. We can't overheat the foam. If we overheat the foam, we're in trouble. It will burn, and we can see it start to kind of curl. And that's fine. We just don't want to melt it. And there we go. So what I do is, as it's cooling, I will put something heavy on it, on the edges, because as we know, we can heat form foam. So what that's going to do is flatten my piece down to keep it easy to work with during the cooling process. All right. So now we have fabric on foam. And we can work with this now. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the edge here. Because sometimes those very, very far corners here, they don't fuse 100%. And that's okay. You need to account for that whenever you cut your pattern. All right. And I would do what's called a block fuse. So a block fuse is when you fuse a bunch of stuff. So I would fuse a lot of fabric to foam and then cut your pieces out. That's how I did that corset. I made some yardage, basically, of foam to fabric. All right, here we go. Keep moving on. And we now have our foam to our fabric. Now, this will pull apart if you try really hard. I'll just be serious, right? We do need to finish this in some way. And with all fusibles, I don't trust any fusible that also does not have stitches. Actually, we have a spot we need to fix up here. If it's, once we sew this or finish this edge in some way, there will be no way for this to peel up. It will be supported and it will be fine. So that's why we don't have to worry about it. All right, now we are done with the iron. You can also fuse foam to foam using this method, but it's a little trickier because you have to be careful of heat. But now we have a piece of foam that works like fabric. Now, let's get that sewing machine out. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a few strips for us to practice with. And we're just going to do a few straight seams. I'm going to show you 2 different kinds of seams that work very good in foam. So in the corset, what we have is a lapped, what's known as a lapped seam. So what you're going to have is an overlap here and an overlap here. So what I did in the corset is I have sewn down here and then sewn down here. And what that gives me is a space to put boning. So that's how you would build a boning channel. Actually, that's not very straight. Let me straighten this up. Another trick that is super easy is to use your rotary cutter, one of my all-time favorite tools. And your rotary cutter works wonderfully with foam. All right, so there's a seam edge. Here we go. And we're going to put another edge here, nice and straight. And then we will measure a distance just so we can see this easily. Oh, where is a ruler? Here we go. No, let's overlap by 3/4 of an inch, something like that. Okay, and then I'm just going to use a Sharpie so that it's really visible. Obviously, you don't want to use a Sharpie. So I learned my lesson the hard way about painting with Sharpies. So because a Sharpie is an alcohol-based paint, this was especially a problem with my Shira because it was all white. So because it's alcohol-based paint, I had an issue where I had the black coming through, and I kept putting more paint and more paint and more paint with my acrylics. And yeah, I was a lot of paint, and I still had ghosts of the Sharpie. So alcohol paint will come through acrylic paint because it's water-based. And so that is something that you want to be careful of if you're using Sharpies with your foam. Okay, so I am going to cut a piece of this water-soluble stabilizer. And mostly because this is so easy to get off. It's not real expensive. You can buy it at any fabric store. And a roll goes a really long way when we're doing this because we only need some strips. And this also makes it much easier to sew with because you can see through it. Now, if you don't have water-soluble stabilizer, this is where your paper is going to come into play. So you'd put your paper down on top of this. But, clips. I don't have my clips in here. You need to use binder clips or quilting clips for foam when you work on it because pins will leave holes that you don't want to later have to fill. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to looking at the sewing machine here. My settings on my sewing machine. I am going to use for this a straight stitch, not a zigzag. I'll show you when we use a zigzag. And I'm going to make sure this is a long stitch. If my stitches are short, this will just become a perforation line. And although the fabric might go together, you'll have a big dig into the foam and it will be bad. It will not look nice. And you'll end up with a lot of work trying to fix that. So Yes, a walking foot is absolutely spectacular, but all of the feet will leave, all of my feet that I've tested, even including my vinyl foot, have actually caused some amount of tracks on the foam. And because you probably don't want to have to deal with the tracks in the foam, I'm using a topper basically. But the walking foot is always a plus when it comes to something like this, for sure. And you don't need a very like major machine to do this. Every home machine can go through this foam. It's really not a big thing at all. So I'm going to make my stitch long. I'm also not going to backstitch. You're better off to leave thread tails, but the backstitching, again, we're treating this like vinyl or leather. So I'm just going to go ahead and start this. Oop. Slow my machine down a little because I am not using a foot, and this always gets me. It's so weird to sew without using a foot. All right, stop. I'm going to bring my needle up, and I am going to bring this out of the back of the machine. All right, and then I am just going to cut this off. And then what you would do next is spray it with water, and what's left there will come right out. There we go. And if you spritz that even just with a little bit of water and just let that sit, that will come right out, and water does not hurt the foam. So I actually have my machine set to its longest stitch, which is a 5. So whatever, go long. Always do tests though. Always, it never hurts to run a test. So you can see this is actually really strong. Like, I'm pulling really hard. That's only one seam. But what we're going to do is do another one. We're going to overlap. So because we lapped this, we're going to do the next one. Now, we really should measure. We should measure this distance here because we cannot sew from this side. If we turn it to this side, what's going to happen is the feed dogs, and I don't know if you're really familiar with feed dogs. I'm going to take you into the machine. These guys here, they are rough, and they will just eat your foam for dinner. So that is a nope. Unless you have something major on there so that foam doesn't get eaten, like paper. You'd have to have a proper piece of like copy paper or something. So don't put your foam that way. So we're just going to use our foot as a guide as to how far away we should get that stitch. Okay. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my foot up to the stitch before, and I'm going to move my needle to the middle, and that should be about right because I know how big I made this seam. Okay. There we go. Now we are sewing a second one. Obviously this is not far apart enough to put boning in for a boning channel, but you get the idea. There we go. And we have a second one. And I will trim that off real quick so you guys can see that. Get off there, you. All right. And so now I want you to see how strong this is. I'm actually shaking. I cannot pull this apart. So yeah, you'll see I damaged the foam here and here where I was pulling before I damaged here. And so what we could do is trim off this excess there. And then if we really wanted to make this smooth, we can seal this here with some sort of, foam clay or silicone or however you want to seal your foam. Here, and I'll show you guys how this disappears if you haven't seen this. The steam will do it. You can actually see it start to wad up and just kind of. So yeah, that's why I like this stuff, because these long stitches can sometimes be a little more fragile. So it just becomes nothing. just goes away. Okay, so that's a lapped stitch. I don't advise a traditional, like, turned seam, just because I found that it's too bulky and doesn't work very good. This reduces bulk. Okay, so we have our lapped stitch. So the other stitch that I want to show you is we're going to butt the two pieces onto each other, and we are going to zigzag down, and I am actually going to use a piece of fabric behind it as a, there we go. I don't know why the other camera isn't showing up. Anyway, my thing is all kinds of crazy. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to butt those on there. So I'm going to cut these so they're straight. And we're just going to use another piece of fabric on the bottom as a piece of stabilizer. Where did you go, rotary cutter? Here we go. And I'm going to put this piece here. Here we go. All right. And now we have two pieces that abut upon each other. And let me grab a scrap of fabric. Sorry, I'm out of frame for a second. All right, and I am just going to cut a strip here that will be for the stabilization. Now, when you're using fabric to stabilize, you want to make sure that it's something that's a little tighter weave. This is actually some quilting cotton, but you know, just something that'll hold it. Okay, and we're just pop these on top of here, and we can trim this up later. Right now, I'm just showing you the technique. I do have in the works a foam corset course coming that will be an online course. We'll show you how to make that corset that I showed you earlier. So if you're interested in more foam sewing, that's going to be how that works. All right, I'm going to use my stabilizer on top. Now, something that you can do is use a bit of our fusible, and you could pre-fuse this before you sew it. That might make it a little easier to sew. I am just going to sew it like this. And I'm putting my stabilizer on top, and then what I'm going to do is going to run this down the middle of the machine. Let me move here. So it's coming down the middle on the machine, and bring this in a little closer, and I'm going to move this to a nice wide zigzag with it's going to be very wide and pretty long. So I've got my zigzag set. Actually, I'm going to set my zigzag as far as it will go, and I'm going to set my stitch to, let's try like a 3.5. All right. Oh, and I'm going to slow this down quite a bit. Okay. So you can see the machine work. There we go. And I'm just making sure everything stays nice and smooth. If your stabilizer gets a little puffy, that's okay. All right, and we're just going to sew to the edge. So we're just pushing these and attempting to make a straight line right on top of each other. Now, this stitch is not going to be quite as strong as the other stitch that we did, but it's still going to be pretty strong. So I'm going to get that stabilizer off. But this stitch will allow us to have a fully smooth surface, because the paint should get us enough clearance on this that you won't feel the stitches afterwards. You know, a little bit of filling, a little bit of sanding, and you will have pieces that connect as if you glued them to each other, which is my favorite part. Okay, so now see, we have that, we have the back. These hold together pretty good. Like, I'm pulling really hard, and the reason for that is the fabric itself is the thing holding it together. So we can trim this up kind of nice, and if you don't want that to fray, which we don't generally want things to fray, I'm just going to go ahead and use a pinking shears These guys are very cheap to come by online. And I'm just going to pink those edges. Actually, you'll see in a lot of vintage clothes, especially 50s and earlier, that pinking for home garments is really common. Actually, in the 1700s, we see pinking as a common form of decoration. So here we go. We're just going to pink this. And now we have a very flat, beautiful foam seam. And that's actually all there is to sewing with foam. It's really funny that after I figured out how to do it, it's like one of those things that didn't seem to take very long. So we have two samples. We have this and we have this, and those are my two favorite kinds. Let me move this back to the overhead. So these are my two favorite kinds of seams. Like I said, both of these are very strong, fully paintable, and you can work with this now however you want. And what's also cool is that you can use regular sewing patterns as your foam patterns now. You can, you just take your seam allowance for lap seams, same way you would do if it was leather or if you were working in, vinyl or something that cannot be stitched in the typical way or is too bulky. So we have a lot of different options. You can basically make armor by just cutting things larger than your body. And yeah, that's pretty much sewing with foam. It's super easy and gives you a lot of opportunity. Now, some glues that are pretty typical for foam are things like CA glue, which is super glue. A lot of the foam cysts use rubber or contact cement. I hate contact cement, not because I hate it as a glue, but because you have to get out the respirator and you have to be in an open area and you have to do all of those things, and I don't like any of those things. I actually just like things to be easy, and so if I need to, I can hit this with dabs of glue, or I can add details on over the top, like little pieces and bits and bobbles with my glue, but my structure, this is all foam that is sewn. All right, does anybody have any questions? I know we went a little quicker and it doesn't take the whole hour, but it's actually just really easy. And this also makes it easier against your skin because now we have cotton against our skin and not direct foam, which I don't know about you, but when I get direct foam against my skin basically goes sweat, sweat, sweat. And it's like, oh, it's so hot. Now you'll still get warm. It's still foam on the outside. And you can use different kinds of fabric. So like I said, you want to give this some more structure, use a heavy twill or a duck canvas like you would for a corset. You can put whatever you want onto here, onto the back to give it structure. So we're basically using this like fused underlining. That's it. Underlining, interlining, flat lining, whichever you want to call it, they're all basically the same exact thing. Anybody have any questions? So I want to thank you so much for coming out today and for watching. I do have my new book is out. If you haven't seen the video, the live is still up for that. That is going to teach you everything you need to know about organizing and prepping and documenting your projects. I have a new pattern coming out on the way for a corset cover. That actually makes a super cute summer top as well. And also for the foam, it is SKS. I'm going to put that in the chat. Let me get my keyboard here. So SKS Props, and you buy that from Blick Art Supplies. I can look up the link for that real fast. Excuse my nose because I am just having a terrible time with allergies. It is corn season, so I'll get that chat for you. I'll get that into the chat. Yes, it is $12 right now. Yep. and it includes all of the workbooks. And I would love for you to make something, and please tag me in it because I love to see what people make. I do. So I am so happy that everybody came out to watch, and this live stream will stay up. And I have some new videos coming out very soon this week. And like I said, I'm going to be working on that corset course. So it will be part live, part take at your own pace. So there'll be a set of online classes and then a once a week live meeting so that you can ask questions and move along. So I look forward to doing all that stuff with you guys. And I'm just really happy that you're here. And if you are not subscribed to my channel, please do. I appreciate all of everything that you have. Oh, if you're in the UK. Yes, who sells in the UK? Give me 1 second because I know there's a really big foam supplier in the UK. So let me look up cosplay foam. Why is my... Oh no, I think my keyboard might have hit the bucket. Okay. Yes, so look up cosplay foam. Sometimes you'll find, I do know for a fact that there is a really big foam supplier out of the UK. Also, if you want to know more about foam, check out Evil Ted Smith. He is a super great guy, and he kind of started this whole foam smithing thing. And his Facebook group, you'll find people all over the planet with tons of great resources. And the costumes in there will blow your mind. I know they blow my mind on a regular basis. So, yeah, so I'm glad everybody came out. And, oh, looks like I can type again. All right. I'm going to... Did I get that link in the chat for you? Here we go. So foam, cosplay foam, UK. I wish I could remember the name of it. Polyprops. Polyprops is in the UK, and they have fantastic products. So hopefully that helps. So yes, so Polyprops. Yeah, I will go ahead and put that description in the Polyprops for the UK. There we go. And I'll put I'll put some links down in the description after this whole thing goes up recording. So, all right. Yeah, Ted is like the sweetest guy too. And I love that his name is Evil Ted because he is like the furthest thing from Evil Ted. He's actually the reason that I'm standing here because he convinced me that what I had to say was valuable enough to do this. So I have to thank him because he kind of pushed me over my fear factor that I had about getting online because like it is scary at first. So yeah, he totally helped me through that. All right. Well, I thank you guys all for coming out, and feel free to message me on the socials or my email or wherever. I answer all of the things, and I love to see what everyone makes. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you soon.